Do you usually get angry whenever you're frustrated in a conversation? Unfortunately, these can wreck your credibility faster than the actual issue you're upset about. Today, we'll reveal 5 anger reactions that quietly turn valid frustrations into reputation damage. And at the end, the one that destroys relationships that had nothing to do with the original problem.
Reaction number 1. Blowing up when something frustrates you can feel like you're showing everyone you won't be pushed around. What ends up happening is the explosion becomes the main problem instead of the actual issue you were trying to address. You'd probably think that letting your anger explode shows you're serious about the issue and won't tolerate being disrespected. But the reality is, people stop hearing your valid point the second you explode because they're now focused on managing your reaction instead. But staying completely calm also can feel like you're not showing how much this actually matters to you. So how do you get your point across about serious issues without your anger wrecking your credibility? Try naming the specific problem in one calm statement before emotions take over completely. That way your concern lands before anger becomes the focus. This gives your actual concern a chance to land before anger becomes the focus and keeps people listening to your point instead of managing your mood. When something really bothers you, state what the issue is in one clear sentence right when you notice the frustration starting, so that your response stays focused on the actual problem that needs fixing instead of turning into an emotional explosion that everyone remembers instead of your valid concern. Studies show that people who express frustration calmly in conflict situations are perceived as significantly more competent and trustworthy than those displaying uncontrolled anger. Remember, explosive reactions make anger the issue, so let your point land before emotions take the wheel.
Reaction number 2. Going cold and shutting down when upset can feel like the mature alternative to exploding at someone. Before long, the other person's left guessing what went wrong, and the real issue just keeps getting bigger without ever being addressed. You might assume that staying silent and withdrawn shows you're taking the high road and not stooping to their level. However, what's actually happening is the silence creates confusion about what the problem even is and makes the other person feel shut out. But speaking up directly also can feel scary because you worry about starting a huge confrontation or damaging the relationship. So, how do you address stuff that bothers you without playing guessing games or blowing things up? Consider stating what frustrated you in one direct sentence when it actually happens. This prevents resentment from piling up while keeping communication clear about what the actual issue is, instead of leaving people to decode your mood. When something gets under your skin, mention that specific thing right then in simple terms without the cold shoulder treatment, so that the problem gets addressed while it's still small instead of growing into this big unspoken tension that poisons everything. Research says that passive-aggressive communication increases anxiety levels in relationships by 66% and significantly damages trust between people over time. Remember, silence doesn't protect relationships from conflict, so name what's wrong instead of freezing people out. Reaction number 3. Raising your voice when making a point can feel like you're adding power and emphasis to what you're saying. Pretty soon, people will stop listening to your actual words and just focus on how loud you're getting. This could look like getting louder makes your point more convincing and shows you really mean what you're saying. But here's the thing. When your volume goes up, people's attention shifts from your message to your volume level, and they start tuning out completely. But keeping your voice super quiet also can feel like you're not standing up for yourself or showing proper conviction. So how do you make your point powerfully without volume taking over the whole conversation? Start with lowering your voice and slowing down when you catch yourself getting louder. This redirects their focus back to your actual words instead of your volume and makes intensity come from what you're saying rather than how loud you're saying it. When you notice your voice rising, deliberately drop it lower and take your time with each word, so your message could actually get through with real impact instead of getting lost in all the noise. Studies reveal that moderate vocal intensity, combined with controlled delivery, creates significantly more credibility and persuasiveness than high volume during disagreements. Remember, volume doesn't equal power in arguments. So drop the decibels and trust your actual point.
Reaction number 4. Bringing up old mistakes when arguing about something current can feel like you're building a stronger case with more evidence. Next thing you know, the conversation stops being about fixing today's problem and becomes a trial about their entire character history. It seems like piling on examples from the past proves your point more thoroughly and shows this is a pattern, not just one incident. However, what's really going on is dragging up old stuff makes them defensive about everything instead of receptive to addressing the current situation. But only focusing on today also can feel like you're ignoring that this keeps happening and letting them off easy. So how do you address real problems without turning every disagreement into a greatest hits album of their failures? Try addressing first what's happening right now, without referencing past events or building a case against their character. This keeps the conversation focused on what can actually be fixed today, instead of putting them on trial for ancient history. When something goes wrong, talk about that specific situation and what you need to be different moving forward, so the issue stays solvable and specific instead of becoming this huge referendum on who they are as a person. Research tells us that bringing up past conflicts during current disagreements reduces resolution success by over 70% and significantly increases relationship damage. Remember, the past can't be fixed from here, so stick with what's happening now that needs addressing.
Now, as promised, here's how to handle a reaction that destroys relationships that had nothing to do with the original problem.
Reaction number 5. One bad situation can make someone snap at whoever happens to be nearby, even though that person had absolutely nothing to do with what went wrong. Eventually, the real problem stays completely unresolved, while new damage spreads to relationships that were totally fine before. You'd guess that releasing the anger on someone available helps let off steam and prevents you from exploding on the actual source later. But what happens is your brain's using innocent people as punching bags for frustration that belongs somewhere else entirely. But holding everything in until you can deal with the real source also can feel like you'll explode from the pressure before that happens. So how do you handle intense frustration without destroying relationships that had nothing to do with what set you off? You can pause and identify the actual source before responding to anyone around you. This protects people who weren't involved from catching anger meant for someone else and lets you direct your energy toward actually fixing the real problem. When anger hits hard, stop and ask yourself who or what actually caused this before you say anything to whoever's in front of you, so you might address the real issue without leaving collateral damage everywhere. Studies suggest that displaced aggression damages uninvolved relationships severely, and the original frustration typically intensifies rather than decreases through misdirection. Remember, wrong targets don't relieve right frustrations, so pause and aim your response at the actual problem source.
Which anger reaction do you catch yourself using most when you're frustrated? Let us know in the comments below.